Marcus stood at the entrance of Jefferson High, his backpack snug against his shoulders, his eyes scanning the tall, crowded school building. The morning sun reflected off the windows, casting long shadows across the busy playground. Students laughed, ran, and jostled each other, completely unaware of the quiet storm standing among them. Marcus's posture was straight, military-like, his steps measured and precise. He was new here, and yet, he walked as if he had been part of this world all his life. He had always been different. Growing up in a military family meant discipline, rules, and expectations. While other kids his age slept in late or played video games, Marcus woke up before sunrise, drilled in exercises, and polished every detail of his uniform. His mother, a 4-star general, had taught him that strength was not only about muscles or weapons but about self-control, intelligence, and respect. Today, Marcus would need every bit of that strength. As he stepped into the crowded hallway, the noise hit him like a wave. Lockers slammed, students shouted at friends across the corridor, and the bell rang loudly, echoing through the building. Marcus felt a pang of anxiety, but he swallowed it, keeping his face calm. He had faced tougher challenges than this. It didn't take long for the first signs of trouble to appear. A group of teachers standing near the office exchanged quick glances, their whispers sharp and mocking. Marcus felt their eyes on him, sizing him up, but he didn't flinch. He adjusted his backpack straps and continued walking. "Who's that kid?" one teacher whispered, loud enough for a few nearby students to hear. "Looks different," another replied. "Probably one of those military brats. Thinks he's better than everyone." Marcus's ears caught the words, but his expression remained neutral. He had learned early on that anger or pride was a weakness. He had learned to let the world underestimate him. By the time he reached his classroom, the whispers had grown louder. Some students nudged each other and stared, trying to guess who he was. Marcus slid into an empty desk near the back, his movements precise, controlled. He didn't need to make friends on the first day. He only needed to survive it. The teacher, a tall man with sharp features, entered the room. His eyes immediately locked on Marcus, and Marcus felt the cold weight of judgment. Well, the teacher said, voice dripping with mockery. "We have a new student today. Look at you, straight from boot camp, huh?" Marcus looked up slowly, his calm gaze meeting the teacher's. "Yes, sir," he replied politely, his tone firm but respectful. The teacher blinked, surprised at the boy's composure. "Sit down," he said with a wave of his hand, then muttered under his breath, "We'll see how long that attitude lasts." Marcus sat silently, taking out his notebook and preparing for the first lesson. Around him, students whispered, some smirking, others simply curious. There was an energy in the room, tense and electric, like a storm waiting to break. As the day went on, the teasing began. It started small, a snicker here, a snide comment there. A girl in the front row whispered, "Military kid thinks he's better than everyone," and a boy at the back laughed. Marcus ignored them, focused on his work. He had learned that reacting only gave bullies more power. During lunch, the situation escalated. A group of students surrounded him at the cafeteria table, their voices loud, their laughter cruel. "Hey, boot camp boy," one sneered, "bet you sleep with your uniform on." Marcus didn't reply. He picked up his tray calmly, scanning for a quiet corner. But the group followed, blocking his way. "Come on, show us what you've got," another said, flexing his arms mockingly. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, but he stayed silent. His mind raced, not with fear, but with strategy. He remembered his mother's words, "Strength is knowing when to act and when to wait." He chose to wait. A teacher noticed the scene but hesitated, unsure if he wanted to intervene. Marcus felt the tension rise like a rope tightening around him. The students laughed, thinking they had the upper hand. Marcus's calmness only irritated them more. Then something unusual happened. A janitor passing by paused, watching the scene with interest. Marcus didn't know him, but the man gave a subtle nod, almost as if recognizing the boy's inner strength. It was a small, silent gesture, but it gave Marcus a strange sense of reassurance. By the end of lunch, Marcus had earned a mix of respect and animosity. Some students admired his composure, others plotted ways to make his life miserable. Marcus didn't care. He knew the day was only beginning. The afternoon classes brought new challenges. Teachers, perhaps hoping to assert authority, gave him extra assignments, impossible questions, and critical comments on his work. Each time, Marcus completed the tasks with precision, never showing frustration. His quiet determination puzzled the teachers and frustrated the bullies. As the final bell approached, the day felt longer than any other in his life. Marcus packed his things slowly, deliberately, observing the students and teachers around him. There was a strange energy in the air, a mixture of curiosity, tension, and something unspoken. Walking toward the school exit, Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine, not from fear, but from anticipation. He didn't know it yet, but his mother would be visiting the school soon. And when she arrived, everything would change. For now, he was just a boy in a new school, standing quietly amidst whispers and mocking laughter. But beneath his calm exterior, a storm of strength, discipline, and pride simmered, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. As Marcus stepped out into the late afternoon sun, he didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply walked, every step measured, every breath controlled, every thought sharp. He was ready. The teachers thought they had seen a quiet, disciplined boy. The students thought he was just another nerd to tease. But Marcus carried a secret they could not imagine. A secret that would soon turn the world around him upside down. And for the first time that day, a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Not because he was happy, but because he knew something they didn't. Something powerful. Something unstoppable. The first day was over, but the story had only begun. The next morning, Marcus entered Jefferson High with the same calm precision as before. The hallways were crowded with students rushing to their classes, the noise almost deafening, but he moved through it with purpose. He had learned that the eyes of others could be heavy, and he needed to stay focused. Today, however, he could feel something different in the air. The whispers followed him, louder and sharper than yesterday. As he walked past his classroom, he noticed a few students exchanging smirks and nudges. A boy from yesterday stepped forward, blocking his path. "Hey, boot camp boy," he called, loud enough for others to hear. "Still think you're better than everyone?" Marcus paused for a second, letting his gaze meet the boy's. Calm. Controlled. He didn't respond with anger or words. His silence alone seemed to frustrate the boy more than any insult could. Inside the classroom, things quickly escalated. The teacher, the same one who had mocked him on the first day, seemed determined to make Marcus uncomfortable. "Marcus," he said, a sharp edge in his voice, "try to answer this problem on the board. Let's see if that military training helps with math too." Marcus rose from his seat without hesitation. His movements were steady, precise, and the teacher noticed every detail. As he worked on the problem, his mind stayed calm, calculating every step, leaving no room for mistakes. The teacher's frown deepened, his confidence beginning to waver. Behind him, a group of students whispered. Some laughed, thinking they could embarrass him, while others stared, intrigued by his calmness under pressure. Marcus's silence spoke louder than any words. During lunch, the bullying reached a new level. The same group of students from yesterday surrounded him again in the cafeteria. "You think you're some kind of hero, huh?" one sneered. "We'll see how tough you really are." Marcus looked at them calmly. His tray in hand, he moved carefully, avoiding confrontation while keeping his posture strong. He chose a corner table, away from the crowd. But the students didn't give up. They followed, laughing loudly, trying to provoke him. Suddenly, one of the boys grabbed Marcus's notebook, flipping it open to reveal neat, precise notes. "Wow, you write like a robot," he mocked. Do you even have fun? Marcus didn't respond immediately. He slowly retrieved his notebook, placing it back on his tray. I learned to be ready, he said softly, his voice steady. You should too. The group laughed harder, thinking he was nervous, but Marcus's eyes betrayed nothing. He ate quietly, ignoring their attempts to rattle him. Later in the afternoon, a new teacher entered the classroom, someone who had never seen Marcus before. She noticed the tension in the room immediately. Marcus sat at his desk, calm, observant, eyes scanning the room with a quiet intensity. The teacher could sense something unusual about him but couldn't pinpoint what it was. The original teacher, frustrated with Marcus's composure, whispered to a colleague, "He's too calm, it's like he knows something we don't." Marcus, of course, heard nothing. But a small smile appeared on his lips, just for a moment. He knew that the storm he carried inside was growing, ready for the moment it would be needed. After classes, Marcus walked to the playground. Some students called out to him, trying to provoke a reaction. "Hey, Army boy! Wanna race?" one shouted. "Bet you can't keep up with us." Marcus ignored them, but his mind was already analyzing every step, every movement, every possible challenge. He didn't need to prove himself to them today. His strength was quiet, hidden, and disciplined. A few students watched him with a mix of curiosity and fear. They didn't know what he was capable of, but they could sense he was different. That difference made them uneasy, and their bullying became more aggressive because of it. By the end of the day, Marcus had endured multiple humiliations and constant whispers. Teachers continued to test him, students continued to mock him, but he remained calm. Every insult, every snide comment, and every challenge only strengthened his resolve. As he packed his things, Marcus noticed a few new students whispering about him, glancing in his direction. Something about him was changing how people behaved. They were beginning to realize that Marcus was not just another student. He was someone who could not be broken easily. Walking out of the school, Marcus felt the weight of the day. The bullying had begun, yes, but it was like a test. Every challenge he faced made him stronger, more prepared. He didn't smile or show relief. He simply walked, steady and controlled, ready for whatever came next. Little did the teachers and students know, Marcus's mother would soon arrive. And when she did, the entire school would witness a force they had never imagined. For now, Marcus was patient. He had learned that true strength was knowing when to act and when to wait. The bullying had started, but the real story was only beginning. And the whispers, the mocking, the tests, they were all part of a larger lesson that Marcus was ready to teach. The first day had been tough. The second day, even tougher. But Marcus remained calm. He knew his life had prepared him for moments like these. And deep down, he knew that soon, everything would change. By the third day at Jefferson High, Marcus had already become a topic of conversation among teachers and students. Some whispered about his calmness, some about his strange precision, and a few even feared the quiet confidence he carried. He moved through the hallways like a shadow, unnoticed by many, but watched carefully by those who tried to bully him. In class, the teasing continued. A group of students laughed at his neat handwriting, his perfectly organized notebook, and even the way he stood when answering questions. But Marcus didn't react. He sat quietly, eyes focused, completing every task with care and accuracy. Each time the teacher tried to provoke him, Marcus responded calmly, never losing composure. During lunch, the cafeteria scene repeated itself. The same group of students tried to corner him again. One boy smirked and said, "Hey, boot camp kid, you think you're too good to sit with us?" Marcus didn't reply. Instead, he placed his tray down on an empty table at the corner of the room. He ate slowly, carefully, keeping his movements precise. The students tried harder this time. They tapped his shoulder, bumped his chair, and whispered cruel jokes, hoping to see him lose control. But Marcus's silence was more powerful than any words. The bullies grew frustrated. They couldn't understand why he didn't react. By mid-afternoon, Marcus found a moment to reflect. He remembered his mother's lessons: true strength is patience. True power is knowing when to act. He realized that every mockery, every test, was preparing him. He wasn't weak, he was learning, observing, and growing stronger with each challenge. In gym class, the teasing became physical. A student tried to push him during an exercise drill. Marcus didn't lash out. Instead, he moved just enough to avoid the push, maintaining perfect balance. The boy stumbled slightly and fell, while Marcus remained steady. A few students gasped. They were beginning to notice that Marcus wasn't just disciplined, he was extraordinary. Even the teachers couldn't hide their surprise. One of them muttered under their breath, "He's different. Too controlled for a kid his age." Marcus heard nothing, but a small flicker of satisfaction crossed his mind. They still didn't know the full story. After gym, Marcus walked back to class, sweat on his forehead, heart calm, mind clear. The day had tested him in ways he hadn't expected, yet he felt stronger than ever. He was learning that patience and control could speak louder than anger or fear. By the end of the school day, some students were starting to whisper quietly, "Maybe he's not so easy to mess with." Others still mocked, but with hesitation, unsure if they wanted to provoke him again. Marcus noticed these subtle changes. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply continued to walk with his usual calm, measured steps. That evening, at home, Marcus reflected on the past 3 days. He wrote in his journal, detailing each encounter, each insult, each moment he had endured without anger. He realized that strength wasn't just physical, it was emotional and mental. He was learning lessons that many adults had never learned. Yet, even as he wrote, a sense of anticipation filled him. His mother, a 4-star general, had promised to visit his school soon. Marcus knew that her arrival would change everything. The teachers who mocked him and the students who tried to bully him would see a side of power they had never imagined. For now, Marcus remained patient. He continued to prepare quietly, observing everyone around him, understanding their weaknesses, and growing stronger with every insult, every challenge, and every trial. He was no ordinary boy. He was disciplined, controlled, and ready. And soon, Jefferson High would discover that Marcus carried a strength far greater than they could comprehend. By the 4th day, the bullying had grown bolder. Marcus walked into Jefferson High with the same calm, measured steps, but the atmosphere around him had shifted. The students and even some teachers seemed restless, almost daring each other to push him further. Marcus could feel the tension in the air like a storm gathering on the horizon. During first period class, a group of students whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Let's see how long he can keep that calm face," one said. Marcus, as always, didn't respond. He opened his notebook and began writing, his pen moving with perfect precision. The teacher, still skeptical of him, assigned a difficult problem on the board, hoping to embarrass him. Marcus walked up to the board slowly, steady and unshaken. His movements were deliberate, each step calculated. The classroom was silent, all eyes fixed on him. The students expected a stumble, a mistake, anything to mock. But Marcus solved the problem perfectly, his hand steady as he wrote the final answer. A few gasps escaped from the class. Some students whispered, "Wow, he really is different." The teacher frowned, his confidence waning. He had thought Marcus would falter under pressure. Instead, Marcus had shown strength that no words could describe. But the real test came during lunch. The group of bullies had gathered in the cafeteria, waiting. Today, they had a plan. One of them shoved Marcus's chair as he tried to sit, spilling part of his lunch tray. The others laughed loudly, thinking he would explode in anger. Marcus stood up slowly. His gaze was calm, but sharp, almost piercing. He picked up his tray, placed it carefully back on the table, and sat down without a word. The bullies expected a reaction, they didn't get one. Their frustration grew. Then, one of the braver students decided to escalate things further. "You think you're so smart? Let's see you handle this," he sneered, trying to trip Marcus as he walked to the corner of the cafeteria. Marcus moved just enough to avoid the trip, his balance perfect, his reaction precise. The boy stumbled and nearly fell, but Marcus didn't gloat. He simply continued to his spot, calm as ever. Some students watched in awe, others whispered nervously, realizing Marcus was unlike anyone they had ever seen. Even the teachers in the cafeteria noticed. One muttered under his breath, "He's too perfect. How does he stay so calm?" Another shook his head, frustrated, realizing that their usual methods of intimidation didn't work on Marcus. As the day continued, the bullying didn't stop. Small acts of meanness, pushing, whispering, snickering, were constant, but Marcus met each challenge with quiet composure. Each insult, each attempt to provoke him, only strengthened his resolve. He wasn't just surviving, he was observing, learning, and preparing. By the end of the day, Marcus walked through the hallways with the same calm determination he had carried since the first morning. Yet beneath that calm exterior, a storm was growing. He knew that the bullying would reach its peak soon, and when it did, he would not be alone. A faint murmur traveled through the hallways, teachers whispered about his mother, a 4-star general who would soon visit the school. Students, too, speculated quietly. But no one knew exactly when she would arrive, only that her presence would change everything. Marcus felt a strange mix of anticipation and patience. He had endured small battles over the past days, but the real challenge, the one that would show everyone his true strength, was about to begin. He didn't smile, didn't brag, didn't react. He simply walked, ready for the moment when the storm would meet its calm. The first 4 days had tested him in ways most kids couldn't imagine. Marcus had faced humiliation, bullying, and judgment without losing control. And now, with the next day looming, he could feel the weight of the approaching moment. A single day could change everything. And deep down, Marcus knew that when the right moment came, the school, and everyone in it, would witness a force far beyond what they could imagine. The next morning, Jefferson High buzzed with its usual chaos, students rushing to class, lockers slamming, and teachers shouting instructions over the noise. But today, something felt different. Marcus walked through the hallways with his usual calm, precise steps, yet he noticed whispers and curious glances from both students and staff. Something in the air hinted that today would not be like any other day. During first period class, the principal made a sudden announcement. "We have a special visitor today. Please welcome someone very important." The words rippled through the classroom. Marcus looked up, his calm eyes scanning the room. He didn't show any reaction, but his heart beat a little faster. He had expected this moment, and he was ready. Within minutes, a tall, commanding figure entered the school. The crowd fell silent. Teachers straightened, students froze mid-step. Every eye turned toward the entrance. Marcus's mother had arrived. She walked with the poise and authority of someone who had spent a lifetime commanding armies. Her uniform gleamed, her medals catching the morning sunlight. There was no need for words, the aura of power around her spoke volumes. Marcus didn't smile. He simply stood, observing, as his mother moved through the school. Teachers whispered among themselves, some in awe, others in panic. The same teachers who had mocked Marcus now exchanged nervous glances. "Is that really her?" one teacher muttered. Marcus's mother stopped near the classroom door, her eyes scanning the students. When they met Marcus's, a subtle nod passed between them, a silent understanding, a shared strength. The students noticed it too. Marcus's calmness was not just natural, it was taught, shaped by someone who was extraordinary. The students who had tried to bully Marcus earlier suddenly felt small, their confidence shattered. They had spent days mocking him, only to realize that the boy they thought they could intimidate had a force behind him stronger than anything they could imagine. In the classroom, Marcus's mother addressed the principal. Her voice was firm, yet calm. I wanted to visit today to observe the environment, she said. Every word carried authority. Teachers who had been mocking Marcus sat stiffly, suddenly aware that their actions had consequences. Marcus watched quietly, a faint glimmer of pride in his eyes. He had endured the past days without complaint, without retaliation, and now the true weight of his family's power was being revealed. He hadn't needed to act, the presence of his mother spoke louder than any words or actions could. A few students whispered nervously, realizing the bullying had been a grave mistake. The group that had surrounded Marcus in the cafeteria looked at him, then at his mother, unsure of what to do next. Their smirks vanished. Even the teachers who had attempted to humiliate him felt a sudden wave of regret. The boy they had underestimated was no longer just a student, he was the son of someone they could not challenge. Marcus's mother spent a few minutes walking through the classrooms, observing the students and teachers. Her eyes were sharp, noticing every detail. When she paused at Marcus's desk, he met her gaze calmly. There was no need for words, they both knew that today marked a turning point. As she moved on, a ripple of respect, fear, and admiration spread through the school. Marcus didn't gloat, didn't speak. He simply returned to his work, maintaining the calm and control that had defined him since his first day. Outside the classroom, whispers spread quickly. Students shared stories with friends, trying to grasp what had just happened. Teachers quietly discussed the events among themselves, some in awe, others in worry. Marcus had remained the same, calm and composed, but the world around him had shifted dramatically. By the end of the day, it was clear, nothing at Jefferson High would ever be the same. Marcus had faced humiliation, bullying, and mockery without losing his composure. Now, with his mother's presence revealed, he had shown everyone that strength came not only from discipline but from the support of those who stood behind him. And deep down, Marcus knew that this was only the beginning. The real lessons, the true tests of patience and strength, were still to come. But today, he had shown everyone, silently and powerfully, that he was not to be underestimated. The moment Marcus's mother stepped into the classroom, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The same teachers who had mocked him over the past days now sat stiffly, their faces pale and tense. Students who had tried to tease Marcus stared wide-eyed, realizing the gravity of the situation. A 4-star general was not someone to be trifled with. The principal led her through the classroom, introducing her quietly to the staff. Marcus's mother spoke calmly, her voice firm and authoritative. "I am here to observe the environment and ensure that every student is treated fairly," she said. Her words were simple, yet every syllable carried weight. The mocking teachers felt the sting immediately. Marcus, sitting at his desk, observed silently. He didn't need to intervene, his mother's presence alone was enough to command respect. His eyes met hers briefly, and a subtle nod passed between them, a silent communication of pride, understanding, and shared strength. The students who had bullied Marcus earlier began to whisper nervously. One of them muttered, We didn't know, she's," the words faltered, unsure how to express the shock and fear they felt. The teacher who had mocked Marcus the most tried to regain his composure. I was only," he started, but Marcus's mother looked directly at him, her gaze unyielding. The silence in the room was deafening. No words could defend the humiliation and disrespect he had shown Marcus. Some students began to realize that Marcus had endured more than they had ever imagined. The boy who had seemed quiet, disciplined, and unassuming was not just any student, he had strength, patience, and courage. And now, with his mother present, the true power behind his calmness became undeniable. A few teachers tried to explain themselves, stammering weakly, but their excuses sounded hollow. Marcus's mother simply listened, her expression calm but firm. The unspoken message was clear: respect is earned, and mocking or bullying someone with discipline and integrity would not go unnoticed. In the back of the room, some students whispered among themselves. I think we went too far," one said quietly. Another nodded, realizing that Marcus's quiet demeanor was not weakness, but strength waiting to be acknowledged. For Marcus, this was a moment of quiet victory. He didn't need to speak or act. The humiliation and bullying that had haunted him for days were fading, replaced by a sense of justice. He had endured with dignity, and now, the world around him had shifted. As the day went on, Marcus's mother walked through the halls with him. Teachers avoided eye contact, students watched from a distance, and the energy in the school had changed completely. The mocking, teasing, and underestimating of Marcus seemed almost impossible now. By the end of the day, whispers and murmurs filled every corner of Jefferson High. Marcus had survived, endured, and quietly triumphed. His calm strength, patience, and dignity, combined with the presence of his formidable mother, had completely transformed the perception of everyone around him. For Marcus, it wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about proving that true strength was not in anger or retaliation, but in patience, discipline, and quiet courage. And today, that lesson had been made clear to all. As he walked home that evening, Marcus felt a sense of calm satisfaction. The storm of bullying had not broken him. Instead, he had faced it with dignity and emerged stronger, leaving everyone around him to reflect on the power of respect, discipline, and resilience. The real challenge wasn't over yet. Marcus knew that life would continue to test him, but now he had shown the school, and himself, that he was ready for anything. The whispers, the fear, and the awe would linger, reminding everyone that Marcus was no ordinary boy. The following day at Jefferson High felt different. Even before Marcus walked through the doors, the whispers had already begun. Students exchanged glances, teachers straightened their posture, and the air was thick with anticipation. Everyone knew the events of the previous day had changed the school forever. Marcus moved through the hallway with his usual calm, measured steps. Nothing in his expression gave away pride or anger. He had already won in his own quiet way. Yet, today was not just about him, it was about showing the lessons he had learned to those who had doubted him. In the classroom, the teachers who had mocked him avoided eye contact, their voices subdued and hesitant. Marcus took his seat without a word, opening his notebook and beginning his work. Some students glanced at him nervously, still unsure of how to behave. By mid-morning, his mother returned, not just as a visitor, but to formally address the school. The principal gathered all teachers and students in the auditorium. As Marcus entered the room with his usual poise, the crowd fell silent, sensing that something important was about to happen. His mother stepped onto the stage. The presence she carried was commanding, yet calm. She looked over the students and teachers, her eyes finally resting on those who had tried to humiliate her son. "Every student deserves respect," she began, her voice steady but firm. "Mocking or bullying anyone, regardless of who they are, shows weakness, not strength. Strength comes from patience, discipline, and dignity." The room was silent. Teachers lowered their heads, students shifted uncomfortably, and Marcus sat calmly in the front row, listening. His mother continued, making it clear that she had observed everything, every insult, every snicker, every attempt to provoke him. "Marcus has shown all of us the true meaning of courage," she said. "He has endured challenges without losing composure. He has demonstrated strength that goes far beyond physical power. And that strength deserves respect." The teachers who had doubted Marcus felt a deep sting of guilt. The realization of their mistakes weighed heavily on them. The students who had bullied him earlier whispered among themselves, finally understanding the gravity of their actions. Marcus's mother turned to him briefly, giving a subtle nod of pride. Marcus returned the gesture with the same calm dignity he had shown all along. It was a silent acknowledgement of their shared strength and understanding. By the end of the speech, the atmosphere in the auditorium had completely shifted. Marcus's quiet strength had become a lesson for everyone. Teachers and students alike began to see him not as an ordinary boy, but as someone who embodied courage, patience, and dignity. For Marcus, the victory was not in humiliating anyone or seeking revenge. It was in showing the power of calm, disciplined endurance. His dignity and patience had transformed the school environment, teaching everyone a lesson they would not forget. As the day ended, students approached him, not to mock, but to apologize or express admiration. Marcus accepted their gestures with quiet humility. The bullies, who had once surrounded him with ridicule, now kept a respectful distance, their arrogance replaced with awareness. Walking home that evening, Marcus felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had faced bullying, mockery, and disrespect without losing himself. And now, through patience, discipline, and resilience, justice had been served, not with anger, but with dignity. The events of the past week had changed Marcus, yes, but they had also changed Jefferson High. Students and teachers had learned an important lesson: strength is not measured by how loudly you speak or how easily you intimidate others, it is measured by patience, courage, and the ability to stay true to yourself. Marcus knew that life would continue to challenge him, but now he had proven, quietly and powerfully, that no obstacle was too great. And for the first time in days, he allowed himself a small, contented smile. The storm had passed, and he had emerged stronger than ever. The days after the events at Jefferson High were quieter, yet charged with a new energy. Students walked through the halls with respect, teachers carried themselves with caution and humility, and the entire school seemed transformed. Marcus continued attending classes with his usual calm and discipline, but something had changed in the way others looked at him. He no longer walked alone in whispers or chuckles. A few students now offered small greetings, some even smiles. The bullies who had tormented him before kept their distance, no longer daring to provoke him. Marcus noticed this, but he didn't feel pride. He knew the lesson wasn't about power or fear, it was about patience, strength, and staying true to oneself. At home, Marcus reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about the first days at school, the mocking, the teasing, and the constant tests of patience. Each moment had been a challenge, yes, but also a lesson. He realized that true strength was not in fighting back immediately, but in enduring with dignity and courage. His mother, the 4-star general, sat beside him one evening. "You did well, Marcus," she said softly. "You didn't need to raise your voice, and you didn't need to act. You proved something far more important: patience, courage, and respect for yourself. That is the kind of strength that lasts a lifetime." Marcus smiled quietly. He had learned that the power to endure, to stay calm under pressure, and to let action speak louder than words was far more valuable than revenge or anger. At school, Marcus became a quiet source of inspiration. Other students who struggled with bullying or felt powerless started observing him. They noticed how he handled difficult situations without anger, how he maintained discipline in the face of chaos, and how respect could be earned through patience and courage. Even teachers began to reflect on their own behavior. They realized that authority was not just about rules or punishment, but about fairness, understanding, and encouragement. Marcus's journey had not only changed him but had sparked a subtle transformation in the people around him. One afternoon, as Marcus sat by himself on the playground, a group of younger students approached him. We just wanted to say we're sorry for how we treated you," one said. Marcus nodded, acknowledging their words without bitterness. "It's okay," he replied simply. "Just remember, strength is knowing when to act and when to wait." Walking home that evening, Marcus felt a sense of peace he had never felt before. The bullying, the mockery, the tests of patience, they were all part of a journey that had shaped him. He knew that life would continue to challenge him, but now he was ready for anything. In the quiet of his room, he looked at the medals his mother had earned over her career, the symbols of dedication, discipline, and leadership. He realized that her guidance, combined with his own patience and resilience, had taught him lessons that no one could take away. The story of Marcus, the boy who had endured mockery and bullying, the boy who had remained calm in the face of ridicule, the boy whose mother's presence revealed his true strength, would be remembered quietly, but powerfully, by everyone at Jefferson High. And Marcus, sitting quietly with a calm smile, knew one thing clearly: true strength is not in showing off power or seeking revenge. It is in patience, resilience, courage, and dignity. That lesson, he understood, would guide him for the rest of his life. The school, the students, and even the teachers had learned that lesson well. And Marcus had not only survived, he had inspired, taught, and quietly changed the world around him. The end of one story marked the beginning of another, a life built on discipline, courage, and quiet strength, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring.